welcome to this evening's Prom Street presentation by Richard A.D. Jones, Transforming Healthcare with AI, Reality versus the Hype. We are excited to have you here today. I am Enrico, and I'm a PromSG Inclusion Officer, joining you from Saudi Arabia. Our speaker today is Richard Jones, the President and Chief Strategy Officer of possibly the world's most important AI-backed healthcare company, C2AI, winning multiple awards, including 3 CogX AI wins and consistent top 3 in 4 years. He has also created a startup aimed to democratize the use of AI and contributed to papers on synthetic data. He lectures at UCLan School of Medicine and Maynooth University and is a mentor of the GE Edison Accelerator Program and the NHS Clinical Entrepreneurs Program. He spoke at the United Nations General Assemblies in 2022 and 2023 on AI in healthcare. He is author of Project Management Survival and is currently working on a book on AI in digital health. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our speaker for today, Richard Jones.
Yeah. Okay, a few simple rules. This will be much more fun if you ask really, really hard questions. Okay, like really, really let's embarrass him questions. I'm going to go through these slides pretty rapidly. Stop me and ask questions if anything's unclear, okay? And it really is one of those ask me anything kind of questions because I think I'm like 20 startups in, I'm about 150. I've got a lot of experience across different areas, but actually the practical application of AI is like super interesting. So about transforming healthcare with AI, and a lot of this is about how you don't transform healthcare with AI. But it's pretty much traditional. I'm going to start with the greatest slide in the history of the world, if I can make the thing. This is the slide. If you ever want to talk to anyone about AI, show them this slide. This one is essentially, some of these you'll notice are chihuahuas, some of these are muffins. This is the kind of problem that you have to deal with. However, I was on a phone call with a friend of mine who lives in Austin, Texas, and she went through security to fly back from Fort Lauderdale. And security stopped her and went, "You've already checked in. You already come through." "No, I haven't." "Yes, you have." "No, she hadn't. Her daughter had." So there's a 99.5% accuracy in terms of facial recognition. It's like, I recognize you, who the hell are you? But this is the outlier when it's like, you're somebody else. So this is the unicorn event. But we've got AI trying to do lots and lots of different things for us. The biggest challenge, probably at the moment, is healthcare. And here's why. $2 trillion worth of waste globally. That's 25% of healthcare spending is waste. 9% of it you can find, nobody else can find. That's why I'm standing here. 80% of healthcare spending is on serious chronic conditions. And those chronic conditions like COPD, like ischemic heart disease, etc., they're blocking up our hospitals. And it's why in America, CMS is going to go bankrupt, Medicare is not going to have enough money, etc. And as another lesson, if you do arrive slightly after everybody else, you end up sat at the front. And maybe picked on by the lecturer, but probably not. 3.2 trillion in America is the impact of those chronic conditions. So they're only about 4-point-something trillion at the moment. There'll be 5.6 by 2026. That's getting on for 20% of GDP. You do not recruit new people to solve this. In America, they've lost 1 million nurses in the last couple of years. 1 million nurses who, on average, when they started off, to get tenure in America, you need 10 to 15 years of experience. Now you need 3, which tells me that they've lost something like 10 million years of experience. So this idea is we're going to recruit more people. Yeah, good luck with that. Let's get more nurses. Let's recruit experienced nurses. Where do we traditionally do that? We basically screw over countries like the Philippines and Malaysia and pay them more money and they come here. Not anymore, they're flying over us. We don't like this because, hang on, it was fine when we did, but when America does it and Canada does it, that's not fair. But that's what's going to happen. America, because of its economic power, is going to get all the nurses kind of going there. And you cannot get yourself out of this problem simply by more people. So there's an organization I'm part of called Stay Left, Shift Left, 10X. The stupidest title ever. It's about left shift in healthcare. It's keep people out of hospital, keep the preventative care working, etc. You don't incremental gains yourself like that. Dave Brailsford, the guy who did Team Sky, who's going to go to Manchester United, David Spurs fan, me Liverpool fan, we don't like that. Incremental gains. Let's change your pillow to get your sleep just a little bit better. You will not incremental gains yourself out of the issues in healthcare in any manner. You need to have 10x improvements, 10x in terms of return on investment, in terms of better diagnostics, in terms of better speed through the healthcare system. And 15% of healthcare spending is on stuff that the hospital shouldn't have done. And when I talk to hospitals, they say, "Oh yeah, we know what we did wrong." Yeah, you know when you chop somebody's leg off by mistake. You know when you remove the wrong kidney. They don't know this. The 90% of stuff, the stuff that maybe you should have done and didn't. And that's how we're basically going to change healthcare. This will be popular. So AI is going to put healthcare back 2 years. I'll explain more in a second, but in simple terms, everybody here, I mean, in your own organizations, so it's not talking about branding, you go, I don't like that. That'd be better if that was blue, and that'd be a little bit bigger. And I like the old thing, and some people like the new thing. Everybody has a say. So as soon as you democratize AI and say, we've got this generative AI lurking out there, we can have a go ourselves. And suddenly every organization's got an idea. Not necessarily good. And if I'm the poor person who's actually trying to pass through those different ideas and figure out what should be advanced and what shouldn't, I'm in deep trouble because I've got hundreds of ideas coming at me and previously it was tens. I'll justify this. So some real classic things about the use of data. So this I'm really happy with. This is precision and accuracy because those things are two different things. Okay. On target, I can definitely work with that. I've got a good cluster, but it's off target. That's worrying. Don't worry, I can ask the AI, is this good or not? And one of the classic things is, literally had the conversation this morning. Somebody's talking about chronic kidney disease and saying we can do some risk stratification on that. And I said, well, you can't measure the outputs. If you don't know what the outputs are, you don't know whether your effort went well. It's like firing a gun over the top of a wall. You don't see where the bullet lands. But this is not very helpful. This is just noise. So here we know we've got some kind of issue. Bottom left, noisy and bias. So essentially, I'm not even getting close to the center. I've got a serious issue here. And there's three more I'm going to show you in a second. And this one, I can see that I'm starting to make some progress. So in the world of AI, as we start to work through different models, we're trying to go from this to end up at this. But if you haven't got data, then you've got a serious issue. How do you know if you have this problem? So somebody this morning was saying, we're doing chronic kidney disease. Okay, so how are we going to measure this? Oh, we're going to be monitoring it. Right. What are you going to be monitoring? Because they've got this company that looks at blood test results, etc. How are you going to be monitoring it? If you're diabetic, you get a minute-full test, which is designed to look at your kidney function before you get chronic kidney disease. So you can look at the results of that. This person had no idea what the input data was going to be. And then if you knew what that was, you have to correlate that with some results. But if you don't know what the bloody results are, so some minor challenges there. But AI, being very clever and very topical, brings some new stuff. Insufficient data points for proper conclusions. Skin cancer detection. Interestingly, it's the same thing in the literature as it is in AI. So this is a long-standing scandalous problem, not a scandalous problem raised by AI. But the AI is not very good at looking at skin cancer on black skin. Why? Well, there's lots of reasons why. I hope the company actually gives a toss. But do they? Because they haven't got a big enough data set and a sufficiently representative data set. What about self-selection of the people who want to be part of that survey, who will say yes? Well, we at Johns Hopkins, we looked at all the people who were at Johns Hopkins and it was all great. But you know what? That's not the same as 20 miles down the road. So you need to have enough to actually make sure that the algorithms that you're running are representative. Hey, Siri. It's not lucky my phone's turned off. I can't get Siri to give me sensible answers to things. But if the AI is not going to tell you how it's come up with conclusions, because I'll talk about it in a second, it's not a very cooperative team member. That's a problem. And this is the worst one. It was fine when we checked it. We did this massive study. It was published in the British Medical Journal. It was all fantastic. And then, unfortunately, we seem to be killing people now. So how do you keep things on track? From a regulatory perspective, MHRA, it's a nightmare. So we're having lots of wonderful conferences and people are wringing their hands and it's all very, very interesting from an academic perspective, but it's like a serious bloody problem. In terms of project management, you've had a team member like this, changes their mind, won't share their working. There's a very, very well-known company that's just won a very large award somewhere in the world for a platform. It's a bit like this. So that 6-year-old kid that used to sit next to you at school wouldn't want you to copy. Might kill somebody unprovoked, or lead to the death of somebody unprovoked. Has no empathy and no remorse. These are kind of worrying things to look for in life partners and also in project team members. In very simple terms, as a psychopath, it doesn't have a moral compass. It doesn't have an ethical compass. When we, wring our hands and get excited about Terminator and oh my God, Skynet's going to come for us, and one of my colleagues literally today saying, when we're together in the trenches in 6 months, when the OpenAI bots trying to kill us, right? When we get excited about that, there's no empathy. There are no rules that are underpinning what it does. It can basically do what it wants. Way above my pay grade to fix that one, but that's an issue when we think from a practical perspective within a project. We are just trying to get a specific set of results. Now, what are we trying to improve? This is a great one. Teslas are really, really, really good at crashing if you come screaming up behind a car and that car moves out of the lane and there's another car in front of it going slower. It doesn't see it, it crashes. Proven, right? They'll be getting better at this. And we all go, oh my God, self-driving cars, this is a disaster. But the point about self-driving cars is not to get down to the idea of 0 deaths. Somebody I know kind of inside Tesla basically said they're trying to get to 500. So they will have accidents that kill people. And you've got to make a kind of value judgment, say, well, yeah, my relative died because the Tesla did a dumb thing, but overall Tesla is saving 37,500 lives a year. And it's that balance. But now we come down to that thing about the human acceptability of whether you're going to listen. So the doctor says to you, the AI says you've got this. I'll tell you what my first reaction is, can I have a second opinion from a human being, please? Why? It's completely irrational. But actually, that ability for us to accept what the AI is saying hasn't shown us are working. When we don't trust it, we can't have a cup of coffee with it, we can't talk to it, it seems a bit strange, and it's psychopath. It's a little bit of a challenge.
You've got problems with politicians on this, haven't you, really?
Politicians are great. So if I say to you that the technology that we have would save between £3 and £4 billion a year for the NHS, save 150,000 lives, and it's not been rolled out nationally yet, that's probably my answer to prioritization of politicians and what they do. But back to this, innovation pipelines are going to get blocked. So we've got a certain number of things that we can evaluate. We're looking at portfolio management, risk and reward, where are we going to put our time, where are we going to spend our finite resources in terms of human beings, machines, money, etc. And suddenly, lots of people have got these great ideas. And they're very enthusiastic about it. I swim with a lady who sadly has probably got about 6 months to live. She's got the second rarest form of cancer, and there's no cure for it. And she's South African, she's fantastic. She's going to basically bloody-minded survive it if she possibly can. I'd really like to save her life. But if I focus down on that, the 20 people in the world who've got that, as opposed to the 20,000 or the 20 million that have got something else, I'm making the wrong decision. but I may be very passionate about that. And I may say to my team, this is what we need to do. And so lots of people with ideas. And as we open things up, using generative AI, using other forms of AI, we can start to essentially build our own solutions. Our innovation pipeline is full of well-meaning people with lots of ideas who weren't there previously. So that's a problem in itself. You've got the Wild West end of it, which is, does the bloody thing work? Never any kind of overhyping of any organizations. Fair enough. Things which are not delivering what they're supposed to do, people basically lying their asses off. Never happens, which is good. Regulating it is an issue. MHRA earlier in the year said, don't talk to us till September. It wasn't like we're a bit busy. It was like, we're not talking to anybody until September. October, they kind of opened up again. Everybody's now trying to get in on the act, because you can't, in theory, use data and deliver a medical device, something which is advising doctors on what to do, without proper regulation, unless you are a big tech company. And you've got some things that are kind of online at the moment that basically are medical devices, and for some reason you don't bloody realize. If you are giving somebody something online that advises them to follow a certain course of treatment or not treatment, or to go and see a doctor about a particular thing, it is a medical device and it requires regulation. So, you know, there's some big tech companies out there, like Google, who probably need to look at some things. You've got this as well. I'm a clinician. I'm face down in the spaghetti every day. Literally, again, talking to somebody today, and the clinicians are just churning the handle. So I would like you to lift your head up, because I'd like to have a discussion about something that we're thinking about doing, which might change the way that we work, which might not, because it might not work. No slam dunks here. We're just going to investigate, and is this a good use of your time? Frankly, I'd rather be doing this. And then the next thing is, we've got this thing, we've actually done some evaluation with it, and we've got a pilot trial that we've done. Would you like to play with it? Somebody in Nottingham, bless them, idiot, said, have you done anything local? And I said, yeah, it was 15 miles away. Is that local enough for you? Apparently not. Still not working with that hospital. So you go to another country, you're going to have to do another trial. You're going to have to essentially roll out that same methodology, and find clinicians who are incredibly busy, who are burnt out, who are facing the mass resignation during the pandemic, who are spending huge amounts of time in front of screens. Notice they're spending about 2 hours in front of a screen every day, 500 keystrokes per anything. David coughed. But the electronic health record system, this unified source of truth, is going to save a lot of lives. What it is going to mean is that when you come along with your new solution, and that you've convinced the clinicians because you've validated it enough that they think it's interesting, the IT team is going to say to you, that's great, but you know what, come back in 3 years because we're doing Epic or Cerner. We're putting in an electronic health record system, and frankly, we're kind of busy. And they are. Point solutions. Back to, do I want to save 20 people or do I want to save 20 million people? I did an evaluation the other day of what we address. We address something like 83% of healthcare spending globally with what we do. You know, I could try and push it up towards 100, but frankly, why bother? Because 83% is still 6 trillion, and it's still an awful lot of stuff. And who's going to trust data? One of my colleagues literally today, he said, I put our investment deck into, I anonymized it, but I put it into ChatGPT to see what it thought of it. I said, as an M&A financier, review this. And he's very happy. He's very pleased with himself. That's great, thanks. Our information, which frankly isn't, that's not an issue, but he's not thought that information is now part of ChatGPT. So I personally don't want my medical records being part of that. So there's a massive thing about GDPR, about compliance, about the use of the data, etc. So who's going to trust that that gets the right result? Again, not many people. And a final one, which comes back to this one a little bit, is, okay, so I'm seeing Me, I was going to say David again, but he's in rude health. We managed to fix him. So Richard, we need to just look at your blood test results. I'll just log into that other system, and we need to understand this other simple part of it. And it's a bit like seeing a jigsaw where somebody's taken away from a 1,000-piece jigsaw 994 pieces. So you can see 6. And if you want to see more around an individual bit, you've got to log into a different system. Doctors haven't got time. Very well-meaning chap today was saying, no medics I know at this hospital want to do this, but I think we should put a value proposition to them. Because if they don't care, if their hair isn't on fire, they're not going to use this. These things have to be clinically led rather than IT led. So here's a maturity model. Totally legible, I hope. Don't worry, I'll show you a couple of bits of this. On the left-hand side, there's this idea that innocence is like, oh, lads, you're having a go. On the right-hand side is excellence. And on some maturity models, you can have a bit of a sort of a broken line and that's kind of fine. It's interesting just to figure out where the heck you actually are. Well, you're trying to drive all the way to the right and basically you just stop wherever you think you are. So let's look at a couple of these in detail. So in terms of data, remember, I need to have a represented data set, because otherwise the project is essentially going to fail, or worse than that, it's going to be a total success that ends up, as the world's biggest healthcare company told me a couple of weeks ago, with them being on the front page of newspapers twice. The project succeeded, but it doesn't deliver the objectives. And from a project management perspective, the milestones and objectives have become incredibly complex. So I've got a concept, but no data. Great. Inside data, but uncertainty on bias. That's definitely going to be very good. Because the whole point about this is not healthcare and digital health for affluent white people. This is for everybody on the planet. We've got data from 47 countries were applicable globally. And that's a hill I'll bloody die on. Okay, so social determinants of health, equity, lack of bias. But I've not got enough necessarily, or worse than that, I just don't know if I've got enough. Some aspects to reduce the impact of bias. Kind of good luck with that. So we're just looking at the moment at Indigenous areas, or where Indigenous peoples live in Canada. We've done this in New Zealand, we're doing this in American Samoa as well, actually looking at issues of equity and bias. But if you don't look for those areas, if you just work around Calgary, so you don't see those people. If you just go around Edmonton, you don't see those people. If you look for those communities, they tend to be geographically located. So how am I going to get to them? I'll send them a form. In Western Samoa and in American Samoa to some extent, people will not go to their mailbox. This is not a value judgment. This is not a criticism. This is just how it is. So if I can't send somebody mail, how am I going to enroll them? If I don't go to that community and talk to the community leaders, which we are, I can't necessarily enroll people from that to reduce the inherent bias of the fact that otherwise they're not in the survey. Excellence is huge data set, multiple countries, multiple applicability. The on-ramp. The single hardest thing to do. If one more hospital system globally says to me, oh, we're just doing Epic at the moment, well, can you talk to us in 2 or 3 years? Or in America, Cuomo was getting a lot of advice from Northwell. So Northwell, you rock up there, 2 years. If you've got an API, 2 years with an API for them to even look at what you're doing. So excellence is this. No integration required, or as plug and play as you possibly can be. Because otherwise, your great idea, which you haven't got enough data for, which is potentially biased, which is not going to get through the innovation pipeline because there's so many other people trying to do that, which is going to take 6 months to a year to get a trial hospital, who then takes 6 months to a year to finish off that trial in this country, but you now need to go to this country and repeat that. This is not a short-term game or gain that you're looking at. So I've had huge fun with this. I love words. So the past is, AI and BI. BI is in business integration. Well, not really. Bad information, CI, clinically irrational, AI, awfully inconvenient. You're getting stuff either with AI or without that actually is not giving people the right answers, that is driving the wrong behaviors. And I'll show you some stuff that will scare you rigid in a second, particularly if you're having a heart operation in 2016 in this country. So we're trying to do all these things. And we're trying to do all these things because when somebody says, that's great, Richard, I want that. And you look at them, you go, oh, bless, you're a clinician. That's nice. That's exactly the audience. We're clinicians for clinicians, but there's going to be a management team somewhere and somebody needs to see value. We got a contract for an area in the UK, fully signed off. Everybody wanted it until the finance department went, can't really amortize that in the right kind of way. So thanks, government, we don't want that £1 million. Literally rejected the money and wouldn't take it. Did people die as a result? Oh, hell yeah. Were the clinicians annoyed? Yeah. But life's not necessarily rational. So as many of these as you can possibly have. Demonstrable quality improvement. Ratings and reputation improvements. This is very much about America, where they've got the STARS rating system, that if you're an insurer of people in the population, if you have a 5-star rating, you can market to them all year round. You lose a STARS, most of them will do in the upcoming year. You can't market to them all year round. So they're kind of desperate. That's the lever. Always know what's kind of in it for the other person. Business intelligence, cost improvement, data integrity, that's super important. So far, I'm 13 months into a journey with an organization that has got one of the biggest market caps in healthcare that will undoubtedly tank their market value without us, but they cannot get data to us for us just to prove something that we've proved in lots of other places. 13 months, simply because of information governance and data integrity issues. And we've done this in 47 countries. There's nobody who does this better than we do. And yet, customers and clients and people with the data, what of a challenge. So, evaluating a project used to be pretty easy. Okay? Some classic kind of stuff. I've got a certain amount of investment, a certain number of resources that I can put in place. I've got my matrix organization. Always a pleasure to have a matrix organization. I've got my ideas coming in. I've got generation of ideas, and then I've got these, hopefully, diminishing fairly quickly. What I don't want is I don't want lots of ideas carrying on a long way through this, because essentially that costs me money. Is your AR project going to work? No idea. Okay. What does the project charter say? Oh, it says it's going to work. Do you know at the moment? Yeah. So can we kill it? Well, no, because it might work. Oh shit. Okay. So everything is going to keep going longer than you think, because you can't get to that stage of we can comfortably kill this now, which is frankly one of the things that you have to do. And what does that mean from a finance perspective? This guy this morning was saying, oh, you just need to come up with a proposition and they'll like it. Didn't know who would buy it. Didn't identify people who had money, didn't know the screaming need that they were responding to. I've got hematologists who really want to monitor results. Okay. Why? Well, they told me they wanted to. Yeah. But what does that mean to them? What do they do with that information? Because unless you can actually say what this means is this. We prioritize the elective waiting list in lots of NHS trusts in the UK. And if you're in one of those, frankly, you're in a better place than if they don't. If you don't prioritize the waiting list, mortality goes up about 40%, complications go up about 100%. What that means is that people who should be at the front of the queue aren't, and they get sick and they come into an emergency admission. So we reduce emergency admissions by about 8%. And overall, we can save 1 bed day for everybody on the elective waiting list through a couple of different approaches. But I've got these other ideas, these wonderful ideas coming through, lasting way too long. This chap today couldn't identify what the big benefits would be, couldn't identify any benefits, didn't understand what the screaming need was, didn't know if somebody had any budget for it. So again, this is just practical project management stuff. Do I actually have somebody who's willing to put their hands in the pocket to pay for this? But this is the classic thing. This was IBM, I think, first said this. Every time you go a further step, the costs increase tenfold, right? So I'm the king of having 20 startups in, right? I will have a comedically funny idea every day about something that we could do. It's about a minute. I mean, it's not very expensive, but if I share it with you guys, I've just wasted a minute of your time. And if I say, well, let's actually go and do some evaluation, that's another tenfold. Then we start thinking about a proof of concept and a minimum viable product and talking to somebody else. So the further we get down here, the worse. As I said before, AI ideas are going to get a long way down here because people don't kill them. Biggest problem in project management, people don't kill projects early enough. Back in the day, I remember ICI had a visit coming from the royal family. And there were people who were painting stones white, as they used to do. And they looked at this shed and they went, where's that shed there? And they talked to the person who worked in there and they said, so, stupid question, what are you doing? I'm monitoring this. It was a problem, I kid you not, that had been fixed 20 years previously. But nobody had actually taken that moment to say, right, we can stop doing this. If you can't kill projects effectively and then reallocate the resources, you are essentially wasting those finite resources. And AI is going to make it super difficult because that will just be screaming down here. And there's a scary bit coming. And I mentioned the film Tenet, which I don't really understand. So any of you can kind of brush up on that before we get there. That'll be good. Good milestone statements. Statement of achievement and a quality statement. If I'm watching Sleepless in Seattle and I want to be somewhere, where do I want to be? I want to be at the top of the Empire State Building at a particular time. How do I know that I'm there? I can basically nail it. It's not about I'm going to take a flight because maybe the flight doesn't get there. It's not maybe I'm just going to go there. It's the who, what, when, where, how, the smart stuff, the Kipling, I have 6 faithful serving men, the talk well, I know the names of what and why and when and how and damn it, I've screwed it up, but there's another word in there. 6 things that define and get complete clarity. Great, so we can all do this, right? This is simple stuff. Super important because A, sometimes your job relies on it. B, sometimes it's with an external agency who will try and weasel out of something. And C, sometimes it's the thing that defines whether or not you get paid, either personally or as an organization. So really important to get that right. Except, it just rewrote itself. Yeah, we just thought we'd got to this particular, apologies for that. We thought we'd got to a particular milestone, and now we're not. We've actually just gone backwards, which you don't get with human beings. But you kind of spot it and you can be unpleasant to them, but you can't talk to the AI and say that it shouldn't do that. So now we are on Tenet. Because now we've got stuff which is essentially traveling back in time. I thought this was good, and now it isn't. It's like where it was a month ago. Why is that? Well, let's ask it. Good luck with that. I've got Wassenstein GAN. I wonder what happens. I will just shout at my monitor. Not going to work. So this is the bit that's going to cost us. It's this extra effort of us passing through. Someone's going to kill me because he's working the remote camera, by the way. So as I sort of prowl about like this, he's doing his very best to keep me in frame. That's what I'm trying to save, in part from a portfolio management perspective, but also to back winners, because what I want is more ideas at the start, kill them early, and have more good ideas at the end of things. And you might be thinking, well, this is kind of, surely it can't be as crazy as this. It's absolutely as crazy as this. Innovation in development companies, but also in hospitals. So we're going to evaluate 3 things. Well, you've now not got 30 ideas coming at you, you've got 300 ideas coming at you. And remember, the IT team is integrating Epic, so nothing's going to happen for 3 years anyway.
Particular question to that slide?
Please.
To kill the idea.
Yes.
You just mentioned that the skin color is not recognizable in a black skin. We don't have data. So should I kill my AI because I don't have enough data, or should I go and reach for the data?
What you don't do is you don't launch the product.
No,
And
I'm
then
not
discover, because that's literally what has happened.
Should I work on that problem? Because basically black women never been tested
Right.
for certain diseases.
Yeah.
And even police cameras
Yeah.
do not recognize 68%. So my AI can recognize black skin, Indian skin, and so on.
Yeah.
Should I bring it to the healthcare or should I go just to police? That's the question.
It's a really good question. I'll talk to Neil Daly, who's the CEO of Skin Analytics, and say, are you having any issues with this? So Neil, the last time I spoke to him, had 14,000 data points, and his stuff does work. The trick as a generalization is you don't launch the product without realizing that potentially you've got that issue. So there's a testing issue, and there's also just a maths issue, is that somebody has not realized that the results are creating an issue, which means the data set is woefully insufficient. So somewhere there's a statistician that needs to have their butt kicked. As to what you should do with that, you'll really be interested.
Awesome. Thank you.
Can I add to that? I think it's a very good point. Because on AI, we all know that the more data that you train. From the other hand, on a product release, in IT world, you never ever can create ideal product. So it's all based on release basis. So effectively, you put the product, check it out, get insights from where it works, update on releases. So you can actually potentially launch it. I say quietly, actually, no, openly, sorry. We're launching it for white women for now, want to test on them, but meanwhile, we're reaching out to get the data with the sources, and then we create another release. So we retrain AI model. That's how IT world and many products operate. It's a release-based system, and that's different from a services-based system.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
MVP version.
So if you've got a life sciences company involved in that project, you've instantly created an Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry Code of Conduct breach, which could have them suspended by.
Awesome.
So what I'm saying is not.
No, I mean, but it has to be open. That's what I said.
You're right. The challenge is what you can do in the real world, so that you can't release in the same way. You can't have that kind of that fast release, and somebody needs to be thinking about it.
Yeah, so effectively, yeah, but we need to think about the release staging, because that's the whole product release in IT operates. And that, by the way, the whole current LLM AI system works on. The more data you train, the better AI. So you have time to acquire data. You cannot just get it, kind of release it. So you have to be honest what it's capable of, right? So I think that's a challenge.
Where's the data going to come from? Because a lot of these things would be, we're trying this on live patients.
Yeah, so, but that's what you're saying. You need to probably in the next stage bring some software that recognized black skin and work with others and so on, but you just cannot capable to do it now. But in 1 year, maybe yes.
I'm going to be, it's a very easy thing for me to say. But I'm going to say it. You don't launch the bloody product until it works. Because
All groups. Yeah.
Because so in one of the things I'll show you in a while about social determinants of health, when you look at the elective waiting list in this country, social determinants of health determine your health. It's not about I live in a postcode and I'm going to make an adjustment for that. We can see the increase in comorbidities. You get 100 European affluent patients with a particular risk profile for elective surgery. You'll find 155 people of Afro-Caribbean heritage. You'll find more people of Afro-Caribbean heritage who are from a deprived area. I wouldn't like to be the person, and I can tell you the health secretary will be, now Steve Barclay's gone, the new health secretary will be thinking about the Daily Mail. And are we going to do something whereby essentially somebody walks into their GP and they say, I would do this test on you, but unfortunately your skin color's wrong.
Yep.
So we've got to find ways of actually freeing up the data and managing it sufficiently well that we trust people to work with it in the right way. And to be honest, deliver the right bloody product and to spot that it didn't work. That's the thing that really pains me, is like, they should have bloody known.
But if you have the product doesn't work on a small data set, white people.
Yep.
So what's the point? Then you kill it.
If it doesn't work on the smallest data set, then
Unless you improve something that you think you
somebody that says you've got to provide a pretty compelling argument to keep going.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
So there's the business case. Okay, we can invest this much money, we can get this data set, it's going to cost us this much. How far away are we? I was going to think, well, they'd kill it if we didn't get to 40% yields in a it's a complete manufacturing thing. 40% yield from stuff that was started off at 0.5%. We got to 38%. At 38%, they then made a kind of judgment. But it's that constant business case. What are we going to? It's like a crash table. What's it going to cost us, and what's the benefit that we get going forward? So there was the question, and the gentleman there.
Yes, I just want to understand, because I'm not from a medical background,
Sure.
but my observation is that there are more, we call it mixed race people. So if you're talking about white skin and black skin.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, I have a relative who is slightly light skin.
Yeah.
But will be classified as black skin.
Right.
Did their DNA tests, and they are 60% European. So in terms of what's inside,
Yeah.
might conflict with what looks outside.
Let's take it. Take it. It's,
Another complexity on another
That's the
screen of
complex,
complexity.
if we leave genetics to one side, we actually said it wasn't. I did a project back in the day looking at bricks
Yeah.
and the color mix of bricks coming off a production line.
Yeah.
On that, if I couldn't spot lighter and darker bricks that were browner and redder, essentially what I was doing was failing. So this is, if we take it away from the genetic background, from the heritage, from the other things that are underneath, this was something which was supposed to do a simple job and recognize things using camera technology and AI-backed, interpolation of the image, and failed in some cases. And those cases correlated strongly with darker skin.
Yeah.
So that for me is we ain't doing it. We've got to get this right. Then there's an ethical thing of, so Richard, are you going to let people of lighter skin die? Because it's quite complex.
It is very complex. So is managing expectations, because people might prejudge.
But I think the point was that they didn't know that there was the issue. So essentially, it's a bit like poor breast cancer screening.
Yeah.
You can see people who are kind of brought back
Yeah.
because it hasn't worked,
Yeah.
and they had the expectation that it was going to work. So it's multi-dimensional.
Yes.
But we've covered, sorry, quickly the same. We have a blood test recently screened on a cancer, and that is 70% accuracy, but they're still going ahead. It's 70% accuracy of that. So it's still, you still need to go and it's very expensive technology. Okay, people working on it, improving it.
That's the target thing. So if it's 70% for populations and everything else is 50%, I'm all for it. If it's not working with some parts of the community and it's still a massive advantage for some, then it's a question for NICE about whether they're going to deploy that. But if human detection is 90% and that is 70%, at the moment, that's just playing. And that's taken away, it needs to get to be better than humans. And there is a massive argument about whether, because the clear killer app is about image processing, about mammography, about MRIs, about CT scans, etc. But there's a very interesting argument about radiography, about whether that's actually led to an improvement in outcomes or worse outcomes. So comparing the kind of the human and the machine is important. Everyone has been very patient.
Yeah. Thank you very much so far with the detailed information. I'm happy you talked about the clinical and the IT profession, vice versa. Project management is a very funny wide scope topic in the sense that you mentioned that you shouldn't you should kill the project along the line. But most of the time, people are not communicating well for it to be killed at the right time. And at the same time, if you have a target, you have to head on. Yet at the same time, they're wasting resources. So what is your, or what are you doing as an expert in this field to make sure that things are appropriate and you bring heads together to make sure that at least the complexity will be a bit reduced? Thank you.
That's a really good question. If I was in DeepMind or if I was in some large organization, Optum or United Health, I might have a much better answer for you. I've got sufficient control with my colleagues on what we do that it doesn't really become an issue. What we're doing is there's a core technology platform and we just find new uses for that. I'll show you a couple of those in a minute. And I think it comes down to You know, if you want to go traditional, go Cooper stage gate. So what do we need to achieve at this particular point, and has it achieved it? And the largest corporate failure, a company called Ionica, back in the day, the largest first round investment ever that failed horribly, went through stage gate 3 because somebody from Motorola went, that's all right. They didn't follow the process. It was like, Stan's a good guy. This will be all right. He'll figure out how to save it. So it's probably the discipline of actually, if you have got a process in place to kill stuff, of being ballsy enough to do that. But then, and there's something hopefully you get to at the end about why, what kills your project. And one of them is like, well, it's the only thing I'm doing, so I don't really want to not work with this. Or this is flavor of the month. Or the CEO who has just come in and then in the 90-day plan, it says we have to do this, even though it's absolutely stupid. No smiling faces, nobody nodding in the audience whatsoever on that one. So,
Yeah, the other one, which you said along the line as well, which I thought I would do since I've been injected, is that you talked about experts, experienced people, and laying off to bring new people.
Yeah.
That one too is another problem entirely in every organization.
Yeah.
So what they are doing, like when it happened in the pandemic era, I was part of the people that had the conspiracy theory and everything came to limelight, is that at the point in time, everything went dead. So they have to budget their heads and bring retired people. Because sometimes you can't buy experience. And you need those experienced hands to make sure that things are on board and are right. So another question is that, what are you doing into that? Even though you have said that you are a small company, well, we need it in a larger organization as well.
CEO's 52, my colleagues 59, chief medical officers 70. I deliberately got myself very old. And it's not, so I see this 30 under 30 stuff and 40 under 40 stuff, and it's great. It's encouraging young people to come through and be entrepreneurs. I'm on like startup 20, so I've kind of figured out a few things along the way. You've got to have the right team around you, and it's not about necessarily about age or other things, but it's about just that. You have people who are pragmatic and who can make good decisions. And one of the things I found is when you get somebody from, as I did when I was working in Saudi, somebody from Unilever came in, nephew of the CEO, I found good salary was on. Very request, can I have $4 million? What for? I went for this campaign. Like, oh shit. And then I know how to be a small cog in a big organization. In the startup world, so I'm president chief strategy officer. Who does our website? Me. Why? Because I can do it. Would it be better if somebody else did it? Yeah, probably. But we'll kind of get to that. But for the time being, I might as well do that.
I may have misheard you, but did you say that AI in certain circumstances can reduce effectiveness?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the reason why I'm saying this is because one of the projects I've studied is in New York, and that is on MRI assessment and mammograms. And the problem is that although it's very effective, the AI system, we've got a legal problem because, as you know, doctors in the US, even if there's a small understanding of a cancer, so on a ROC curve, it's very low, and it may be benign. They will recommend that a surgeon operates, and that is causing an excess of deaths. So in rich areas, AI, because it's so effective in identifying tumours and potential tumours that may be benign even, because physicians are afraid of litigation, there's an excess of surgery which causes an excess of deaths. So the irony is in New York, compared with another area which may be in the countryside, the survival rate is lower for breast cancer.
That's fascinating. It's exactly the kind of issue that you can have. You can go to Milton Keynes Station and you can get an MRI done. I was thinking about it's like $1,000, right? It's quite a lot of money. And I thought about it for a minute. I thought, it's just going to find all kinds of literally minor stuff that I don't necessarily need to worry about. Of course I do. But yeah, it is this thing of these essentially these unwarranted side effects, and these unintended consequences. Sorry, that's the right phrase.
Hi, so I'm a medical doctor and I'm just thinking about all this AI stuff which is coming in.
Yeah.
And actually the ability for you to pay for healthcare and to get that MRI. Do you not see it as a big experiment? So actually those who can will, to a certain extent, with resources, and we're going to just see what happens. And in 10, 20 years time, hopefully we'll have a data collection of those people who are doing more advanced stuff, or like you're saying, the outcomes now with taking every little tumor or potential tumor out versus those who can't, who don't, and then we'll have our data about how to move forward. Is that just what's going
I
to
think that's the
happen?
horrible reality of the world. So I've got some friends in the US who are stupidly rich,
Yeah.
and they will, you know, if they have an issue, they will go to a private hospital. We work with the Mayo Clinic, and they've got people walking through the door and getting all kinds of weird stuff done. And you've got medically indigent people who have essentially tried to pay for their own medical cover in the US and now are on the streets. So the thing that we base ourselves on the fact we look at 100% of patients that go through, say, acute care. 100% of patients, 100% of the time. Not everybody does that. If you then start to do things, and we at, and it's unfair, I won't name a sort of a particular hospital because I'm not going to characterize what they might do, but those hospitals that have got those far wealthier patients who are doing different things will be getting those data sets, which are not necessarily representative either on the basis of social determinants of health or on equity or on sex or on income, because the thing that we're working with one of the big US hospitals on is that ethnicity itself is not enough. You will have a massive spectrum of wealth within that. So let's actually start to sniper rifle down and really understand. So people who are in pharmacy deserts and food deserts who don't have access to exercise of a particular ethnicity with a certain income, other people with incomes to try and do better. But you are essentially describing the future.
Do you think, is there anything that you're doing to help with the data desert? Is it a case where you actually should be going to where the populations are and just collecting more data?
We've taken 450 million patient episodes of care from 47 countries, because I don't want to see us falling down on bias. I don't want to see us falling down on equity. It means we can do things like with the indigenous population in New Zealand, where we could identify that in one particular hospital, the quality of care relative to the underlying case mix of patients, in other words, how sick were people when they came in, was really good for both the European heritage and the indigenous population. The indigenous population were remarkably healthy when they were coming in. So you then went, wait a second, it seems strange. Why is that? And it's because the people who weren't healthy for the indigenous population never even made it to hospital. They never got referred. So we're trying bloody hard to basically do that. And also maternity. So the last 6 maternity scandals in this country, 5 of them we would have seen coming. One of them, we possibly might have communicated with the hospital a week before it became a scandal. The last one, the Lucy one, we wouldn't have seen coming. We're trying to figure out how we would have done. But other than that, that did not have to happen.
Do you think enough data would answer nearly all the questions?
No, you don't need any more data. We can do that today. We talked to one of the scandal hospitals, the team there, and said, this is what we think happened. This is what we saw from our risk-adjusted algorithms looking at the data from your hospital. And we kind of set out what we thought happened. And indeed, that's precisely what happened. So we wouldn't let it get to the stage of, yeah, let's make sure this doesn't happen again. It's like we would ring them up after a month ago. This is wrong. E.g., you've got too many manual childbirths. So when the risk-adjusted cesareans, nobody wants to do that. But my wife's a midwife, so it's like I'm not against midwives, as we call them. But in one of them, the midwives were trying to do a particular thing. They were trying to go for too many natural childbirths, which had consequences. We see that early. I don't think it's about more data, because everybody's going crazy about data. Is it clean? How do you cross-correlate between it? We took multiple sources of data to end up with algorithms that work off one source of data and correlate with very high specificity. The last thing we did, the ROC curve is 95%-ish on the prioritization of patients. 85 or above, you're in good shape. The ROC curve of 95 is extraordinary. So we're trying, but it's all these other sort of challenges that are holding things back.
Richard, Fred online is saying, and of course the lawyers get involved.
Oh, how you? Sorry, are they involved now? Are they involved now or? Whose fault is it? In America, you can be a patient safety organization, so you can essentially give the data to the hospital and they are then protected from, because we could give the data to a hospital. Great example. A surgeon who was a fifth year, I'm not sure what the plan is. They were 5 years into experience, fantastic references, killed 7 patients in 2 months. The hospital didn't see it. Wasn't deliberate. They were doing bowel resections. They were using the circular stapler at the wrong angle. We said, stop. Statistically, we can't, we're not 100% sure, but this looks really bad. Go and see what this person's doing. Another surgeon's in the room, in the theatre. Stop. That would have been 30 or 40 or 50 deaths. So you can stop these scandals. But if you provide that information in the US, say, you need to be a patient safety organization, because then you are legally protected from the lawsuits of people saying, well, you knew there was a problem with this and this and this. And there will always be problems. We're going to die of something, right? I think. Yeah, old age would be good. Sorry. Is it the lady here first? Lady here first. Sorry, sir.
It's really great that you are making sure the data is representative and complete. And I guess it's worrying when you hear about products that are based on maybe a subset of the population, and then kind of trying to be refined. So really kind of helps in that view. You mentioned earlier some of the challenges in terms of, okay, you've got the data, you've got these views, but how do you then influence the politicians and the management to make these decisions and act on that data? So just curious as to what you think could help kind of drive that decision making and that influencing. And my second question, sorry, is this all seems very kind of quite physical health focused. What's your view on mental health and how that kind of feeds in, and that kind of intersection between mental health and AI?
The difference between addressing 80% of healthcare spending and 90% is mainly cancer and mental health. We've had a good look at mental health to see if we could look at prediction of what happens. The pandemic brought home to me just how bad mental health was. It's extraordinary. And I'm now, when I go to America, I kind of get used to the fact that people are going to be shouting in the streets. It's scary. We'd love to do more on that. We can't address that. And with oncology as well, a similar issue, just because with cancer patients, you make them worse before you make them better. So there's a challenge there, and I'm aware I haven't. So the other part of the question that I haven't answered was
The kind of influencing. So you've
influencing,
got
yeah.
the kind of data, the findings, but if you're not getting NHS Trust to act on that and invest now to save, what's your kind of strategy around that?
So we say we'll do gain share with you. Basically, we'll show you these savings. They'll go, well, oh, hang on, how are you going to calculate that? Acute kidney injury in the UK costs £4,200 of reusables, disposables, returns to theatre, etc. during the course of the year. You can calculate it. It's part of what we do. We calculate all of those things. Yes, the finance director and go, now I need to have certainty about what we're paying out. So just reducing acute kidney injury and hospital-acquired pneumonia, as we have in NHS Trust, if we nationalised that in the country, you'd save £1 billion. You would save probably about 70,000 lives. You would, in one large hospital, you can save about 13,000 bed days by putting that in place. Let's just charitably say that everybody's very busy, and the disincentives are not necessarily there, or the right incentives are not there. When they said they're going to have people, directors, on manslaughter charges, I applauded. Fantastic, because we'll have people doing it a wee bit more seriously and actually giving a toss. Because we've written to lots and lots of health organisations, we say globally, you don't get a lot of response. And we'll write to them and say, do you know that this is going on in your hospital at the moment? Maybe we shouldn't answer. I don't know. Let's not answer. Let's not talk to them. Let's ignore it. So that's part of it. From a political point of view, I'd love to have a great answer for you. The elective waiting list is the 4th highest priority on Rishi Sunak's list. Where we do it, we're reducing 8% of emergency admissions. We are saving a hell of a lot of money for those hospitals, improved lives. one bed day per person on the waiting list. Call that, 2 million just for shits and giggles at like £500 per day. In theory, if you could save that cost. Very hard in a non-command and control structure to get them across the line.
Yeah.
So when we talk to digital health companies, they say, we need to get through the NHS. Go, yeah, I love the NHS. We all bloody love the NHS. Practically everyone in the company is married to a nurse. They came out wrong, didn't they? We're all supported because our families are involved with the NHS. That out, Simon. If you're a digital health company, you don't want to work with the NHS because you've got 140 trusts or 40 ICBs to deal with. I've got a conversation going on with a Nashville-based US system, 60 hospitals. One conversation, 60 hospitals. Where am I logically going to go? So somebody has to kind of unpick that. So, and the attempts at the central things with the NHS, there's a thing called HTAF that's just come out, which is we're going to put some money into capital projects. We're going to get a little bit of that, but not much. And part of that money was pulled back. The 380 million for elective recovery, part of that was pulled back because people couldn't spend it. The £1 million that that hospital got, that everybody signed off on, that we spent a lot of time working on, that the finance director said they couldn't spend. So we can't kind of fix the NHS. Can I ask David a very direct question now? How much time have we got?
About 20 minutes.
About 20 minutes. Okay. Sorry.
Speaking of solving all the NHS problems, a lot of your statistics and research is in hospitals.
Yep.
What is your view on fixing the primary care problem and how that will work with your model?
If you can indulge David in his timekeeping for a second, I'll get to a slide that will show you the kind of things that you can do to target things better. But in terms of solving primary care, we worked on a project to a thing called waiting well. So identifying patients who are on the elective waiting list who are going to be there a long time, because priority wise, they're not going to decompensate while they're on the list, and actually getting them healthier. Now, I've all been to the doctors, well, I've been to the doctor, and he's gone like, stop doing this, stop doing that. Right? You walk back to the classic one would be, I'm going to stop drinking beer, don't eat pies, and get some exercise. And you kind of go out to the car, have a fag, eat a pie, and drink a pint of beer before you drive the car. This worked. The waiting well program worked because we identified the right people, and it was the right support for those people. It reduced down for people who had a 10% chance or less of a pulmonary complication post-surgery. So 10% chance, nobody got a complication. 4.2 for the more severe cases, a 4.2 day reduction in length of stay. Did they like it? Yeah, it had a net promoter score of 80, and actually it was an 85% kind of approval rating for that. So you can do that kind of thing. But now you've got ICBs, hopefully things will get better because the hospitals didn't previously necessarily care if they discharged somebody who then became a problem for primary care. And primary care weren't necessarily, everybody's caring, but they can't necessarily stop and go, I'm going to now kill myself working so hard to stop people getting admitted into hospital. Now we've got these ICBs that are supposed to look at the whole of care. Maybe it'll be better. It's going to be better? That was yeah, okay. Sorry.
Actually, it's a follow-up on the previous person's question, but about the US. The FDA releases their AI-enabled medical devices every quarter, I think. The last one was 700. It's like showing how proud they are that they're enabling innovation. 719 AI-enabled devices were approved so far, 80% using radiotherapy.
Yep.
So what's stopping mass adoption in the US when there's centralization of hospital groups where regulation are a bit lighter?
You're gonna love this one. You're gonna love this answer.
Can't wait.
I was at Vanderbilt, really good hospital in Nashville, and I really pissed them off. I didn't mean to, but they really took offense because I said to them, you do realize there's the CEO of a hospital system that I could kind of launch a rocket at from your roof, who told me personally that if they used our system, they'd go out of business. And they took that as a massive affront to the dignity of all hospital systems globally. And I did say it a wee bit clumsily. If you're on fee for service, as you're on the US, why do I get people with less complications? What's in it for me? Now, Everybody talks good fight about sort of quality and patient safety, but ultimately, if you are on a like minus 0.96 margin, was the information from the advisory board was the average hospital margin. So I'm already slightly underwater. So if I improve complications and have better patient outcomes, I'm doing less work. It's a bit like a lawyer. If I'm a wee bit inefficient, I can charge more time. I get more money. Now, this does seem like a really, really weird thing to say, but it's absolutely true. So as they move more towards value-based care, which is kind of like IoT, is internet bullshit. You know, there's a certain amount of it going on. Value-based care, they're dragging their feet, they'll get to it. When it's that, I need to understand the relationship between cost and quality very carefully. That's what we can deliver. That's why we're talking to some of the biggest sort of payers about what we do, because we can support that. But in some hospital systems, it's a complete disincentive for mass adoption of some of these things. And if I'm a radiographer, say, basically, if you go into the US, you need to go, what's the reimbursement models I'm affecting and whose job am I screwing up? So I'm a dermatologist, I can do this efficiently and get loads of money, or I can do this super efficiently and online and they never come into my clinic. What am I going to do? It's those perverse disincentives and the unintended consequences that are stopping it. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Alok. My question is, when you are in front of NHS with a new product trying to revolutionize their practice for over 70 years,
yep.
Is there a power dynamic in play?
What with a neurosurgeon? What's the difference between a neurosurgeon and God? Neurosurgeon.
So I'm assuming
neurosurgeons say.
So I'm assuming that because it is not extensively validated or not, the proof of concept is not too clear for them.
Yeah.
Have you tried partnering with health tech companies? A couple of them you took names, Epic and Cerner, so that it goes as a standard package when it goes to an NHS trust, and then it sort of builds up the data and the results and what has been the result.
We write back to Cerner, to their EHR in Imperial, for example. We've spoken to their sales team globally. They're interested. If you look in the US, they've got the market saturated. There's no kind of incentive for them to sell more stuff. So retention and upsell is something that's in theory important to them. You're kind of right, but you then get back to this thing of like, well, what are you Cerner now about precision clinical risk adjustment at scale? And clinicians, if you think about the adoption curve, there's this whole thing about innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority laggards. We're all like that, right? We've got some level of risk aversion. Clinicians start way more risk averse because they're trying to look after their patients. So where's this thing been used? Well, it hasn't. It'll be the first trial. Yeah, maybe not. So there is a natural thing of I need to find some clinicians who are going to be involved in this, or it's clinician led within a particular trust, and then we get that sorted out, and then they talk to their friends, and slowly over time. And that's why we're not going to fix healthcare in a year with AI, and because the other reasons, actually, this noise is going to just put things back 2 years, I think, possibly longer. Thank you.
Are you confident enough to push the narrative that if you care about people, use this? And would you say that publicly? Would you, I think a lot of it is about the narrative that you create around it. If this works, if this saves lives, how vocal do you feel you can be about that, newspapers, and get the public clamoring for adoption of some of these tools?
Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm the most annoying person. We've been finalists 47 times. We've won 24 awards, been published in the BMJ. We've been recommended as a top 10 by the Academic Health Science Network to the government. We're a top 10 innovation according to Healthcare UK in the essential category. All those things, not a huge effect.
So
can't go to thank you, one person for clapping at that. It's
I know
kind
how
of difficult
it is.
Well, then there's another classic thing, which is when we're talking to organizations, they say, have you spoken to patients about the use of the AI? It's like,
no.
Are you pleased you're not dead? Literally, it's that. Because a lot of the other things, it is changing the pathway. It's changing how you're interacting. With ours, it is literally as binary as you would have been dead and now you're not. We're not sure it would have been you, but actually the surgeon who killed 7 people, the wound dehiscence, which was creating these effects, the issues with Matt Neo and manual birth, all those things. So, and NHSX sort of started this voice of the customer, etc. That's a difficult
Do you
one.
think it matters though if it's not scientific, if it is social media, TikTok, where it's, you know, reaching the majority versus the experts?
We have talked a lot about TikTok dances to kind of spread the message, but a little bit old for that. We are precluded in our use of NHS digital data from spreading sharing any NHS related result. 6 companies have got NHS digital kind of approval, and it's like, be quiet. Rightly so. I'm happy with that. In Canada, the journalists don't even talk about healthcare scandals. So we've done quite a lot of work in Canada, and it's like, they wouldn't even be interested. There's a long waiting list at Red Deer Hospital. There's ambulances outside. That's fine, but in terms of actual outcomes, so I would love to find a way that people, because this is the ultimate no-brainer, the stuff that works. Lots of stuff that works, but it's quite difficult getting it over the line. So
just continuing that, this is the same problem that Tesla have and the other self-drive people like Waymo, that you look at the millions of miles driven by a Tesla, and accidents, they will have accidents. But it's, last time I looked, it was something like 10% or even less than humans driving. So Tesla had 1 accident in 3 months, and it was all over the press, international news. 1 Tesla killed someone because it couldn't identify a cloud and a lorry. In the US every day, something like 350 or 3,500 die in car accidents without all the heavy injuries. That's per day. 1 death in 3 months, and there was hysteria. And you must be facing the same sort of thing, that if you're diagnosing kidney disease, 1 person dies, etc., there could be hysteria when actually, well, you've avoided 100.
Well, when the AI gets it wrong, and there's a thing in the NFL, at the moment, I think it's reported yesterday, the AI that was designed to look at the impact of CTE on athletes in terms of cognitive ability. If you were a black NFL player, your baseline for cognitive ability was lower than if you were white. That's gonna blow up, and rightly bloody so. But to go back to like slightly more fun agenda, in America, I've got the ultimate way of reducing roughly 50% of deaths of people going into accident emergency on TV arms. You build a taser into a phone, and when you hear 1 of 2 phrases, it tases the owner. One is "hold my beer," and the other is "hey, look at me." Right? Basically, you're knocked unconscious, but you don't go and try and sort of ride a motorbike up the side of a skyscraper or whatever. Kelvin, back to project management. What gets measured gets improved, right? In healthcare, we're addressing this bit because you can't measure it. And if you can't measure it, that becomes a serious bloody problem. So what doesn't get measured doesn't get improved. I'm just going to scare you about 2016. 1 in 3 heart surgeons in the UK essentially ducking high-risk operations because in terms of the percentage complication rate, if I take a high-risk patient, I'm going to get more complications. I get dinged for it. We had the head of the CQC inspectorate ringing us up and saying, "This neurosurgeon's been suspended. Are they any good?" And the answer was, when you risk adjusted for the case mix of patients, they were taking a lot of very difficult patients. 9 times 10 to the 453 permutations later, on every patient they looked at, they were the best surgeon in the trust 3 years running. If you measure things in the wrong way, you get the wrong results. So if you are a high-risk patient, you really don't want people to be measured against a transparent system that says complication rates and mortality rates, because it's essentially misinformation. So we try and look at that many permutations. We'll try and find something like 25 times more in some cases that are not seen manually, including the failure to escalate and omissions to treat, which means that we're finding roughly 900% more issues, and that's compared to typical hospital monitoring, and also the root causes, because somebody says, "Addenbrooks, you've got an issue with hospital-acquired pneumonia." Where? Why? We're quite a big hospital. How do I actually address that? some kind of typical results for hospitals that are world-class, wants to be the safest healthcare group, has all the systems, has all the badges, etc. And yet you can get the surgical complications down. You can get things like AKI, like sepsis, or hepsis even, which is a new thing, down. So, and I'm mindful that David wants to get alcohol in all of you. If you look at the raw harm rate in a particular hospital, they called us at this point and said, we're really concerned about this. What was going on? Well, actually, when you risk adjust using AI, backed systems, 450 million patient records processed, we could see that point A, actually, what they were doing was about what we'd expect to happen. Average performance, not great, not bad, but that was okay. Funny enough, at B, things had really drifted. B was where the problem was. And they didn't know because, look, we're doing better. So it's this thing of AI trying to improve. So 70%, if 70% accuracy is less than humans, got an issue. If it's better than humans, maybe we've got an advantage that we can use there. There's this constant thing of what are we measuring? And to answer the lady at the back's question, this is the kind of thing that you can do in general practice. So this represents, and we changed the particular areas. Red is bad, pretty traditional. Green is good. This is clinical risk relating to the chronic conditions that cost 80% of the healthcare budget. So now I can start to figure out, okay, from a project perspective, where do I need to have some interventions? This is about, you can either look at this, we can do this financially and say, what was the burden? Each of these areas is an MSOA, so an output area with about 1,500 people living there. This one's really bad. You also can see the financial piece and say it's also going to be very expensive as a result. In terms of mortality, the likelihood of kidney injury, hospital-acquired pneumonia, other things in hospital, likelihood of readmission. You want to be going there. So I can do, if I look at COPD, I could have something across the whole of the region, and it's a region-wide thing, and that's fantastic. But actually, let's start to see where it's needed. It's needed here, and it's needed here. And it's not needed there, but what I need to do is go there and figure out why it's so good. What are they doing that's right? So one of the things that AI and the more sophisticated systems we're getting now is we can start to do this kind of thing. And then back to the US for this perverse incentive thing. This is going to be really popular in New York, probably, because one of the hospitals there is a not-for-profit, and they want to maintain their not-for-profit status. So to do that, they can identify where all these pockets of people are, they can put in place programs, and then they can say, look, we are reaching out to the community and doing these good things in the sort of the primary care space, which justifies us being a not-for-profit.
Says 5 minutes here.
5 minutes.
I think you can run a bit.
Well, just look at a couple of things. So, is it acceptable? This is looking at AI in 2019. Boy, this would have changed by now. I mean, some of the things that were said here, but I found this interesting. Is it acceptable to stratify patients by factors such as age, race, postcode, or socioeconomic group? When we were looking to prioritize the elective waiting list, people kept saying, oh, we need to put the postcode in there. Pretty dull instrument. Not very effective. If I move to an area that is seen as socially deprived, what am I going to do? Am I going to get like 100 places up the waiting list, or 10%, or what? It's one of these strange things that people with very good intentions sort of struggle with. So in 2019, this was a big question for them. This is the answer. So on the left, I don't have to worry too much about the words on here, but what we're saying is we're stratifying people on their underlying health and the risk of the operation that they're having. Okay, nobody else on the planet can do this. So it's single sourced by the NHS, single sourced in the US and other places. But the interesting thing is when we then looked at the patients, are we allowing for social determinants of health? Yeah, because this group here, this is the best group to be in, the lowest risk group. European affluent patients, about 60% of them were in the lowest group. Afro-Caribbean, only about 43% of patients from Afro-Caribbean heritage were in that same group. What that means is that those people, more percentage of them, are higher up the waiting list. Not because of anything to do with where they live, but because they are fundamentally sicker. So then when the lawsuits start, as they probably will at some stage in this country as well, and say, it's unfair, I was bumped up the waiting list, or I was kept waiting for this amount of time. How did you choose? This is fair, transparent, scientific, published in the BMJ, high specificity and sensitivity, tested by Imperial, tested by Karolinska. This stuff works, which is the big difference. So I mentioned these numbers. It's kind of important. Yes, sir.
I'd like you to zoom forward 10 years and tell us what you think you'll be telling us then.
I don't believe you.
That's such a great question. What will you be telling in 10 years' time? Anybody else want to have a go at that? I don't know whether I want to have a sort of cynical view of it or an optimistic view. Healthcare will fall apart in most countries unless we change things dramatically. I think the lady's comment about where healthcare is going is prescient, because in the US that is exactly the model that we're kind of seeing. And unless we make huge changes, we are going to see systems collapse, because we've got, and again, sorry to be selfish and speak personally about this, we've got the ultimate no-brainer. In the US, just 2 things out of 3,300 metrics would save 370,000 people a year and $12.5 billion. But because of the gentleman there, because it's a fee-for-service model, people don't actually want to take that up. So there will be a lot more AI. I think doctors will be using it in a much more on a much more regular basis. We will be much more used to getting results from it. And I could honestly go 2 ways. I could say it's going to be like social media. We're going to get, conspiracy theorists and all kinds of ridiculous bits of algorithms lurking out there, or we're going to end up in rainbows and unicorn land. Don't know which one it's going to be. It's a bloody terrible answer. Have you got a better answer?
No, it's just a comment. Everyone is trying to push the idea of AI to go to personalized healthcare in the future. So how achievable do you think that can be?
Impossible.
Well, it's 200% yet. That's why I'm asking how achievable.
Well, we can do it now. So that's one of the.
That's a question in the whole reality.
The reality is we're doing that now. So if you look at that area.
But you said that you don't want your data to be available just previously, a few minutes ago.
I definitely wouldn't have said that unless I was misspeaking, which is entirely possible, because probably you've got no idea what I'm saying after that. It's not that the data can't be available, it's that it needs to be used in the right way. So we can't make it available, say, to the public. We can't bring up the Daily Mail and say, oh, by the way, do you know about this, this and this? Just because it's not something that we can do. But on that list where there were the coloured areas, we can also stratify that by individuals and tell you who is the highest risk individual that needs to have the best treatment, say, to stop their disease progression. We can tell you that in terms of the elective waiting list. So who is patient 1, patient 2. At present, when the NHS did a trial, 15% of patients who were on the elective waiting list in 3 categories only, P2, P3, P4, 15% were in the wrong area. Now, a lot of that is because clinicians are doing what they think is the right thing and saying, because of pain relief, you need to be here, etc. So those tools are available now, but they're deployed pretty widely, but they're not deployed as widely as they should be. But we've got that ability to do it now.
Can I just ask a question about this type of data?
We'll do that, and we'll do the lady there. And we'll do
just quickly, because everyone is focusing on primary care.
Yes.
What about secondary care? Have you tried? Because, for example,
secondary care, we're all over. Trust me.
What I'm talking about, it's statistics here, for example, it's about 50% of people after cancer treatment don't take drugs.
Yeah.
And therefore, the back to primary care. Do you have like that kind of AI analysis on terms of what's happening with that?
We're great at reducing length of stay, readmissions and things in acute care. When you get into medication adherence, Optum and people are on top of that. There's a great company in America called 86 Borders, and all they're doing is helping payers get people to actually come to appointments and do certain things. And it's SMS based, because it literally is just that very simple thing that the majority of their patients can use. So it's after, I think it's a question. Okay, you go first and then you, sorry.
So when you say in the next 10 years, AI is going to be used more, profusely.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good. I'm going to put a decent bet on that. I think that's.
So when you say AI will be used, do you mean AI as a technology or AI as a tool? We of course know AI is revolutionary as a technology when it comes to it, but now I have done a bit of research on it, and what I could see, even as the people who are making AI at the moment is looking at AI as a tool, because we don't really have a lot of regulatory guidelines to sort of define the borders so that we can play in it. So the efficiency of the technology is sort of getting reduced as a tool essentially. So do you see the ringing of the fence with regulatory things going in the right direction so that it moves there? I'm trying to understand the epistemology of the argument.
I think it's a great question.
Thank you.
I'm not smart enough to answer it. I think the regulators at the moment are lost. I think they'll basically start being very reactive, because like you get generative AI, somebody's done a chatbot, which is a medical advocate, which is an incredibly important thing to have. Somebody's kind of looking after your interests in the hospital. That's great, but does that constitute a medical device? So up to this point, when it's physical or it's software, we can kind of understand it. MHRA and the other regulators, the FDA, are all over it. You come up with something clever, it's a bit like Formula 1. It's like, shit, we didn't regulate for that. Oh, now we have to post-regulate. I don't know the answer. I think it's going to be something that will emerge.
I have a regulatory background in medical devices. I can briefly give you an answer.
Sure.
The US has more leeways with clinical decision support, especially the ones that are using AI. This is why you'll see, companies like AI, Microsoft, or Google are launching their LLMs over the world. Not so much here. UK after Brexit, which is not a popular thing to say, it's not part of the EU MDR, which is quite strict on.
They're changing this culture, yeah?
Yeah, so
What happened?
So the European medical device regulation that's slowly kicking in, it has quite strict guidelines on software. There's a rule for Part 11 that's going to kick a lot of class 1 into 2. So, but in the UK, you still have quite a bit of flexibility from the regulatory point of view, where a lot of these clinical decision tools might still be under.
No, it's going to 2.
It will. I think there's a pressure on the government here to also.
We've moved to 2 because you could sit comfortably at 1, and in America they suspended the whole regulation of those devices during the pandemic, but they go for 2. Okay. Right, so some of the back after the lady here.
You've listed lots of wonderful projects to helping within hospital structures, within the NHS. Are there things that you're working for which are paid tools or that individuals can use, or things about improving life of the individual? So let's say, what data sets or what can you say, oh, this is how I can improve my life or my health? Do you have any of those?
I keep thinking about whether or not I should launch a website, which is, am I going to die under the knife? Maybe it's not the right.
A bit more positive about how to extend, or
Well, the thing about it is, so it does get to quite an interesting point. We can look at pre-operative risk, so we can look at and basically our chief medical officer is the world expert on this. So depending on a number of things, Glasgow Coma score, not obesity, interestingly, 14 different factors we correlate, and then the operative type. The level of insult it gives to your body, how long you're going to be under the anaesthetic, etc. We can tell you what your risk of mortality is and risk of complication. Now, we could actually have that on a website. Go 25 quid, you can find out for this operation. Why would I do that from an ethical perspective? Because if at my age I have a radical laparoscopic prostatectomy, my risk of death is 1.6%. If I have abnormal sodium, it's 5.2. If I have abnormal sodium and high blood pressure, it's 15.3.
Wow.
So what the doctor should be doing is using that system to go, Richard, sod off. Take your blood pressure medicine, we'll fix your sodium and come back and we'll operate on you then. But if you're in the kind of conveyor belt, I'm a surgeon, I cut mode, you don't necessarily do that. But also to motivate individuals to say, holy shit, 15%, I am now going to do X and Y to perhaps improve my health. And that's that. We've got people from, there's a 56% reduction in all cause complications of patients who are on that compared to another similar cohort. So that type of thing, yeah. But beyond that, in the individual space, that's where Google and Apple are going apeshit crazy, because they're getting the data from hospitals and they're going to try and, 23andMe, they're going to try and combine all that together and figure some stuff out just to make money.
I mean, what encourages you to keep going when it's so difficult?
I'm giving up.
Just give them like-
It's
Can you do it in 10 years, please?
when you wake up, you look yourself in the mirror and you go, like, actually today our chief medical officer said he just want to save one life. I told him he's failed because he saved hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of lives. So that's kind of worth getting out of bed for. But it's also why it's so bloody irritating when you see some of this other stuff that is going to essentially create this kind of fog of confusion. So, final question, gentleman at the back.
Scientific American did a large survey, and they found that hospitals in the US all recommend a system for pharmaceutical operations and so on. And they decided on a survey, they'd shown that if a doctor, either a pharmacist or a surgeon, didn't follow the recommended situation, they would be prone to dismissal or legal action. What's your view on that?
Oops. There's a number of things which create inefficiency in the system. So I'll go to surgery for a second. If every surgeon in your system is using a different type of knee, you are buying lots and lots of different prosthetics, and essentially it's costing you a lot of money. If you can start to centralize, it's an issue, but the doctors don't like to do that in the US, say. So if you give them a couple of $1,000s, they kind of will actually bend to that. So in terms of efficiency, the kind of the car plant model of healthcare, which doesn't really work, then there's a way to drive efficiency there. Those things I think are only worth pursuing if you are understanding what the outcomes are. So if you do know what the outcomes are and you know that certain things give negative outcomes, you can potentially avoid doing that. So you've got open wound, in other words, the way we used to do operations, you've got laparoscopic. Laparoscopic, you'll find surgeons, they'll start to get wound issues because they're trying to do it in a smaller and smaller space. So you watch that and you give them a bit of a kick. You don't tell them every wound has to be like 4 centimeters or 5 centimeters or 2 centimeters. You actually monitor the outcomes and say, okay, I can see that there's something going on here. Are you guys kind of betting with each other who can do the smallest thing? Are you really? Yeah. Okay, I get it. But beyond that, the US system is interesting, complex, and the presence of lawyers does make things slightly different from here.
Thank you.
Richard, it's been great, obviously, listening to you. I know because I've got a copy, there's quite a lot of slides you weren't able to get through.
Yeah.
Just briefly, if you want to just summarize some of the important things from that, it'll be great. And I think we then really ought to stop. Can I ask a quick question of my first?
Yeah.
We talk about prevention better than cure.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, to what extent is there a big emphasis on, in the UK terms, GP type related data rather than hospital related data?
The whole idea of stay left is it's a really weird diagram, because we read from left to right, but you want people over here. You want people in preventative care. It's the lowest cost area. So as you go towards the right, things get more expensive and the quality of life also decreases. So prevention is vital. The Minister of Health in Alberta a couple of years back said, I want to have no hospitals. Now it's kind of a big ambition, he said, but that would be the ideal, because basically every store staying well in the community. We can't keep sending people to hospital. It's too expensive.
I'm thinking AI for GPs. Type stuff.
There's almost an arms race, I think, between people like EMIS and it's been bought by Optum, who are, I think, 3.6 billion for that, to look at that data. And obviously the Google, DeepMinds, Amazon of the world, who are mining our data all the time and trying to come up with some sensible apps from that, but which will need to be regulated nonetheless, even though maybe they don't. So I think I've smashed these probably enough, but big solutions rather than little things. If you're going to do one thing, it's a bit like if you're selling something. If you're going to sell $100 million project, it's about the same as selling a $1 million project. It's really not that much difference. You might as well sell the bigger one. Don't disrupt clinicians because they're kind of busy. It's going to be one of the key things. And I think David, I know where David wants me to go. So let's just talk about what kills projects, because we thought about killing them deliberately. It's a project management group. What are some of the things that are killing projects? And I'll bring it back to AI for a second. So the first thing is Lord Sugar. If you watch him on The Apprentice, and I know this has been recorded, not scared. I went in to tell him something on a mission critical thing in a Swedish company where he was paying the salaries for a month because what was coming out of that factory was critical to his business. And the key person in the factory was going to resign. And I went in to tell him this, and he gave me the old headmaster, the old kind of, what? You watch The Apprentice, you will learn how not to manage projects, because if you give people shit when they tell you bad news, they won't give you the bad news. So what will they do? They'll leave, or they'll let things fall apart, because that's better than getting a kicking now. So one of the key things is tell your team, tell me something where I can fix it. I'll be super happy. Well, we'll get through it. Won't be any heat or energy. Once we're through it, we'll figure out it doesn't happen again. You tell me something and drop me right in it, then I'm going to go medieval as one can these days. Because I remember actually medieval times. The team that doesn't know what the hell's going on, kind of worrying. And remember, just factor that AI part into this. So there's the incompetent team, they don't know what's going on, or the mute team, the part of it that's AI that isn't going to tell you what it's doing. The ignored team, the team that has been asked about how things are going, and they've given the bad news, given the bad news, given the bad news. You've been dropped in, you're now in charge. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Great, yeah, fantastic. Because they know that they don't get listened to. The team that doesn't give a toss, this probably is where, that leopard is AI. It takes 43 muscles to frown, 17 to smile, but absolutely none at all to sit there with a dumb look on your face. You can't ask the AI what's going on. The doomed team. This is a TV program none of you have watched because you're all too young. This guy used to say we're doomed. They've lost faith in the ability to achieve that final objective, but the challenge is they're not telling you. So in particular in the AI space, it's super difficult because you know where the end target is, but if somebody really has lost faith, if I'm building a skyscraper 40 stories high and I'm like, it's a story a week, when I get a bit behind, I can tell, but I can't with AI. So making sure that people are prepared to be honest and open is good. And death by content. The two guys on a wafer scale integration project in Sweden who delivered a 46 A4 page project plan to me for their 2 pieces of work, which was like super helpful. So, the last one, I love this. The everything goes right plan. It doesn't. So any plan that basically assumes that there's no kind of cock-ups along the way is going to be fairly useless. But bring it back. I'll show you this. So classic project management stuff. The amount of time that I've spent doing this, trying to shorten the plan, going, okay, I've got a critical path, I've got a massive gap, which has got the zoom thing over the top of it. But that's the critical path at the moment. And what I'm going to shift some stuff around. So I've got the same resources on this part as on this part. So if I actually apply the people from here to here, it's going to advance this, which means this is no longer the critical path. That type of stuff, that kind of fun. So I can kind of redeploy. And now what was 13 days is 8 days. Don't worry about it. AI is going to do it for you. So that is the good news about AI. It's going to make your life in terms of scheduling, leveling, resources, etc. That bit's going to be a lot easier. Actually figuring out what to manage, what to continue with, and what to kill is going to be particularly difficult. David wants you to go and get drunk, some alcohol. Are there any other burning questions that you want to ask in front of the group, or you can ask them afterwards?
One small burning question on.
Remember, you are keeping people from alcohol. Just say
This actually might be helpful for a lot of people with startups in AI and software. Share with us your experience. How is the process of CE marking and your experience with the notified body?
joyous. Very, 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 very efficient. It's a massive pain in the arse. We use an organization, L2S2, who are world class. Phil Gaffney, CEO, is unbelievable. L2S2, based in Swinton in Cambridge. They are phenomenal at this stuff. Get a professional involved, because the person I was speaking to this morning is a 6-person team, and he said that's all they're doing at the moment. They're going for ISO 13485 at the moment, and all they're doing is that. They're not actually selling anything or developing anything. They're just doing this. So this wrap of regulatory stuff that you have to have, and risk management and recording of that, and backing up of any marketing claims that you might make, and all this other stuff is huge. With the same caveat, so that you're not keeping people from alcohol.
Just a small question now. Regarding, my question is regarding the diversity of your data sets that you already have. So you mentioned you have data sets from 47 countries. So on the developmental index perspective, how diverse is it? Does it cover the countries that are in the least developed category, or
in the category?
Least developed countries? Does it include these?
I would say
mainly focus on
definitely with 150 million, that's still definitely a criticism, because there's quite a few countries we've tried to work with where the digital health records are, we can work with the data they've got, but they have to go through some manual processes, and it's proven too difficult. So we've tried to work in a number of those countries. We'd like to more, but it's going to be manual, ergo it's not going to be millions. And so I think that's always going to be a weakness in that data set that we've got. That's a good question.
On the same, just a follow-up question. So I'm from Bhutan, so we are actually just trying to adopt electronic health record for the first time. I mean, we're late to the game, but then from that perspective, what do you consider gold data? What data set needs to be captured if you're trying to,
ICD-9, ICD-10, SNOMED, international standards, very consistent. That's what they should be. That's what they should be providing.
Thank you.
I'm sure Richard
Security's
can
here.
answer a few other questions over a drink in a minute. If you've got some other burning questions.
I have a question maybe to all audience. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
It's really important. Somebody in audience mentioned the mental health.
Yes.
And the mental health with AI, the burning question, because my team in Ukraine received the governmental request, people who are working on AI in Ukraine, and government asking, can you help us to help kids who spend a year at home without schooling, without friends, without going to playground, and so on. And they have no idea when it's gonna finish. Is anyone heard anything like that?
Well, we had a similar thing in lockdown, didn't we?
I think, yeah, I mean, there's a company, Kooth, KOOTH, that was founded by a friend of mine that's won an award recently. There's all sorts of things to do with power of storytelling in mental health and trying to help people in that way, but it's not an area I can comment on.
So our idea was to bring to the to kids from 5 to 15 years old, actually talking animals, that they would talk like ChatGPT, but it's gonna be the actual talking AI on the phone. Will it work? Is anyone think that it might work? We don't have time to test, like you said again. Like, you cannot bring the product which is not ready.
I wouldn't have a good answer to that.
Not now.
To hear any ideas, any answers, any afterwards. It's not that it's for everyone, but it is very burning question.
I agree, it's an important area. Enrico, do you want to say a couple of words at the end?
To wrap up now, so we hope that this session has engaged, generated conversations, and gained for everyone insights and information on how to navigate the complexity of healthcare and technology. thus making IT good for society. We thank you all for joining us in London and from all over the world, taking another step forward in this journey of making IT good for society. We thank Richard and his team at C2AI for sharing their time and expertise, and we wish them well as they continue to change the world with this exciting work. The Prompts Committee would also like to extend our thanks to the BCS Committee and BCS HQ team that made this event possible. So thank you guys.